So, hello everyone. Welcome to the Nature-Based Therapy podcast. In today's session, I have a very special guest from Jersey in the UK, and we have Jonty. Jonty's going to talk to us a little bit about his work and what he does and how he brings nature-based therapy into his personal life and professional life as well. So, welcome, Jonty.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you.
Would you like to start off sharing a little bit about yourself, Jonty, where you're from and what type of work do you do? And also, how did your early childhood experience of being in nature informed why you wanted to study nature-based therapy?
Yeah, definitely. So I work for the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service over here in Jersey, which, for those of you who don't know, is a tiny little island off the coast of France, 9 miles by 5, 100,000 people. And yeah, I've only been here 5 years. I've been mainly a bit global, but mostly UK based, I guess, in terms of upbringing. And it's a bit kind of chicken and egg kit, really, with whether my upbringing led me to nature-based therapy, or really maybe what I think has happened is that doing the nature-based therapy has allowed me to take a different kind of, maybe more informed kind of reflection on when I was a kid growing up and my early years and nature. And I look back at it now, having done the nature-based therapy, and just really appreciate the connection I had at a very young age and the opportunities I had. So I grew up in Africa from when I was sort of 4 till 10, and that is I've got some family links there, and it's where my mum was born in Africa and lived there till she was 19. So we very much, as soon as we were there, we were out in game parks, game reserves, or we were getting out of town and climbing up these kind of rocky koppies with these kind of balancing rocks up. And I look back at it now with my kind of nature-based therapy head, and I think, oh, right. Yeah, I've always always really enjoyed the outdoors. And then in terms of my work, thinking back to some of the things that I kind of created in terms of working with young people over the years, young people and families, a lot of it was pushing towards the outdoors, but it wasn't sort of consciously with an intention to connect people with nature. I think it's just that I felt it was good to get people outdoors and do things outdoors, and I've now got a kind of much deeper understanding of how that is so positive. From taking kids and children's homes out on camping trips or cycling holidays and things like that, to getting families out kayaking through central London, but on the River Thames, using like the nature that is the kind of the heart and spine of that city to explore it in a different way. And now thinking about it, I think, oh wow, but we were actually totally in connection. This very weird way, that thing, a total connection with the river, but surrounded by these tower blocks and these huge bridges and stuff, but still with that absolute connection with nature through the paddle. So that's interesting. Yeah. Then I worked on a farm where we had young people coming in and staying for sort of week-long periods, and we'd take them out for walks and have them helping to herd sheep and things like that. But it's that's been interesting, I guess, reflecting on it like that. And I was doing some training yesterday on compassion-focused therapy. We had a little exercise where we had to kind of breathe, ground ourselves, and go to a safe space, create a safe space, or go to a safe space. And I ended up going back to my grandparents' garden, in particular a copper beech tree, a huge copper beech tree they had there. And then I was kind of thinking about this chat that we're going to have today, and what it is that I connect with most in nature. And it's trees, it's rocks, it's mountains, and it is in particular the copper beech. I hadn't thought about it for years, but my granddad's funeral, my elder brother and I were kind of a bit irritated. I say it is probably a good enough word for the kind of the pleasantries that people offer you after a funeral and at the wake. I'm sure it was with all of the best intentions, but for us, we kind of felt it just didn't feel comfortable for us. And we jumped in the car and we drove a couple of miles down the road, and we climbed this very old copper beech tree in the middle of this beech woodland. And I hadn't thought about that for years, actually, but it occurred to me this morning when I was thinking about it and thinking about myself yesterday. And then I happened to be looking out my kitchen window and I could see a copper beech out the window. So that was obviously a big tree for me. But I think, yeah, it's trees.
Wow, it's quite significant. And it sounds like, and this is what we kind of explored in the course with evidence-based research around nature-based therapy, was the biophilia hypothesis from Edward O. Wilson. And it's our innate nature, to seek nature. And for you and your brother, like feeling those feelings of discomfort.
Yeah.
That you just were in tune, that you needed to go to nature to help regulate.
Yeah. On a very difficult day. That's where we went. Yeah. Incredible.
Without even thinking about it, it was calling you.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that we kind of had big discussions about, didn't we, around that kind of finding our indigenous roots, and when the course, and that's just stuck with me a lot, because we are so separated in kind of Western Europe. It's thousands of years really since we had First Nation. Well, I suppose if you go up to the edges, you get kind of the Sami up in Finland and places like that. But the UK, we're miles away from it. And so the thinking around kind of how we link back beyond the first agrarians back to the Mesolithic guys and how we can connect to that has been quite, I find it quite important to share that with people, and share that kind of idea that, we've cut ourselves off from that. Not intentionally, but that's where we've got to as a society over here. But if we can kind of think about where we've come from and the evolution of it all, it's quite clear that we are, physically, all our senses, our physical movement, our brains are all kind of evolved with this innate connection to nature.
Yeah, and we are nature. We're not separate from the natural world, and it's part of us. And I think that's why nature-based therapy can be so effective, is because we're actually really reconnecting with ourselves, our authentic selves. And so it's like a coming home.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and there's a lad I've been working with quite regularly recently who's and he's 14, 15. He's got ADHD and autism, and we go out. We generally go out sort of coastally. That seems to be his preference, and it's amazing. His preference really is to go over either unsteady kind of loose, large pebbles on the edge of the beach, or kind of clambering over larger rocks. But that'll be his go-to and so we'll walk out, and I now intentionally plan our trips so that they will start with a walk over some of this uneven rocky ground, and after sort of 5 to 10 minutes of that, he opens up in a totally different way. So I guess that's his sensory repertoire, I suppose, but also, and it's about movement and being off a pavement, or out of off a stairway, out of a school, and he sort of connects, and he has these he loves kind of talking about the distance and the horizon, and we've gone out at low tide. We have huge tides here, so the island kind of grows in size by 2/3 when the tide's out fully, and he sort of talks about it being like being on another planet, and he sort of gets into thinking about what it must be like where we're walking at that time when the tide's in, and what different animals there might be. But it really kind of engages him. It's great.
Yeah, and it's really good that he's actually able to open up, and he is able to, create that space where he can be his authentic self.
Yeah, That's
And
great.
yeah, and I think, you know, without that walk and talk therapy that you're offering him, imagine if he was in like a clinical setting, that he might not open up or talk about or start to kind of look at the horizon, not having that kind of, like you said, the balance and on the stones, and then whoosh, he's like, it opens up like a portal for him to be able to express how he's feeling or what's going on for him.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think he says almost nothing if he has a clinical appointment. Yeah. And I mean, it's just, so there's kind of a, I guess where I'm with my journey so far with it all, Kit. I've done a lot. It's been much more around kind of being out in nature and having nature there alongside. And what I'd like to do a bit more is kind of the next step of kind of nature connection. But I mean, even at this stage, which I have some groups kind of lined up where I'm going to be doing that. Going to be working with a group of young adults who've been supported by the substance misuse team. So I'm going to be going out and doing some kind of more intentional nature connection, but just using nature. So we've got this thing over here called Decider Skills. I don't know if it's made its way over to Australia. It's a CBT based. These, and its biggest form, I think it's 32 or 36 skills. So we do it in a smaller kind of, I think we do 12 skills with parents and children of sort of under 10, with children with ADHD or autism and their parents. And when I first started the job 18 months ago, we did it in a little room in town with a view out the window onto the back of another building. And we've now managed to evolve that to there's a little national park area on the west of the island with a lovely little wooden hut that we can kind of rent, and then it's got all this amazing kind of woodland and open dune space around it, and we now do the whole thing there with people. And the feedback, you know, was great. You know, so I'll do, you know, I think I was doing a kind of nature connection. I was doing kind of senses 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 with a group, talking about that. And you know, I had a kid sort of above my head up a tree, and another one sort of sat down by a tree trunk, and a parent sort of sat leaning on a branch. But the ability to kind of access the information and for it to actually kind of take root was just huge out there rather than in a little room.
You notice the difference, and it's interesting. Yeah, you started off and you had the view, but it just went up a notch as soon as you took it outside. And I love that you're talking about integrating nature-based therapy with CBT and other modalities, that it is a complementary therapy. It can be weaved in and used in collaboration with other modalities, but it can also be used standalone as well. It can be great for grounding or starting sessions off with the nature-based mindfulness. You can end sessions, you can weave it in. It's just so adaptable and flexible, like nature, right?
Yeah, and it's great, you know. And I've had some nice, I guess, when it's working with the young people, it tends to be kind of nature there as a kind of support, which allows young people to be in a different environment where they're able to kind of explore things. And so I was working with a young lad who's very closed off, again, ADHD and autism, and when I started work with him, we did a lot of bushcraft. We did it all through the winter. We went out to this meadow by his school. He used to go, and it was, you know, sometimes we had to put a tarp up, and we did a bit of fire lighting and some sort of bushcraft stuff. But we were out there, and after about halfway through the sessions, he started talking about the different characters in his mind. And then, so the next session, I brought some boards out, and we were drawing them, and he was drawing them all. But he wouldn't. It's not something that he's shared with his parents. It's not something he'd shared with school. It's sort of the first time he'd kind of opened up about that. At a closing session a few weeks ago, and his mum was saying that she'd sort of noticed big changes for him, sort of in school, at home, and that he started kind of accessing imaginative play in a way that he hasn't done previously, which she kind of puts down to this time that we had outdoors.
Wow, that's quite significant. And I think what you were explaining before was nature has a great ability to hold space. And it also ignites something within us to be imaginative and creative. And we talk about, the right side of the brain and how nature connection is good at creating that, connection with the right side of the brain, which is about imagination, being curious, problem solving. And that's a perfect example of how we can hold space. Nature is co-therapist. So we're there working with nature, holding that space, developing that relationship with nature and the person you're working with, and then allowing them to feel safe enough to express themselves. And I think that's what came out for this young person, was there was some sort of self-expression.
Yeah, definitely allowed that. And yeah, I mean, at the start, I had all these plans. Oh, we're going to do this, then we'll do that, and then I'll get them to sit I'll get them to sit there, and we'll do this amazing connection thing. But it just wasn't kind of going to work immediately at that point. So it was literally just, as you say, holding the space, being there, and being supported to be there, being comfortable to be there, because he was with someone.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping, the right side of the brain. So we've got this project going on very soon, actually. The week after next, we've got a half-term break here, a 4-day break from school. And I've been kind of working on collaborating with people as much as possible to get things up and running. So we're collaborating with 2 local charities and being supported by the local Ports Authority and the local phone company for funding for it. But it's the main charity is Ocean Culture Life, who are all about connecting us to the ocean and the importance of ocean preservation through creativity, through photography, through storytelling, through exploring our connection in that way. And so we've got this project where we're working with Art House Jersey, this charity, Ocean Culture Life, and over the 4 days we've got all these things lined up. But the main kind of final result is going to be that these guys will have, over those 4 days, created a mural, a huge kind of mural. I think it's going to be something like 12 foot by 6 foot. And we're looking at working with families in their first term at sort of big school, if you like. I don't know how it works in Australia, but we kind of go up to 10 in primary school here, and then you move on into the sort of high school, the secondary school. And so they're going to be getting families from a cohort of young people who might have been identified as requiring a bit of extra support with that transition, and families with English as a second language. It's kind of felt within the school that they want to kind of improve the sense of community and belonging. And we're doing this kind of 6 Ways to Wellbeing program, but alongside the John Muir Award. I don't know if you guys have kind of done much with the John Muir Award over there.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah, so he was kind of like big kind of great-great-grandfather of the environmental movement. It's due to him that the national parks in America were kind of first created. And he's massive in America. He was from Scotland originally, but it's the 4 elements of it are: discover a wild place, explore the wild place, do something about the conservation of that wild place, and then share your experiences. So there's this, with kind of, for good reason, all our schools have become fenced off with these kind of 2-meter high fences all the way around them. And there's this little valley that, from the look of it, used to at one point must have been an orchard. It was totally wild and overgrown, and it's the other side of the fence. But there's a gate to get down to it, and it's still land that belongs to the school. So we're going to work with these families over that first term that they're in school to create a different space there, to use the wildness to make it accessible, but also to conserve and promote flora and fauna there, as well as kind of, which touches on a lot of the 6 ways to wellbeing, but we're also going to do stuff around eating. We're going to eat together. We're going to do some stuff around exercise. But they're going to create this space that is then usable by the school, by them. They've got sort of special additional resource centre, they call it there. So where they've got kids who've got sort of additional needs. We're going to do some training with the staff on kind of just increasing confidence, I guess, around taking people outdoors, so that it's a space that, instead of, if someone's struggling in school, becoming dysregulated or whatever, instead of them being taken off to a little room, they can maybe be taken out and sit under the live willow structure or whatever it is that the guys decide they want to do. So that's, it's another nice one on the horizon.
Wow, there's so many ways that you've been implementing nature-based therapy into practice. And as you've identified, working with individuals, working with families, working with community, collaborating with other services, bringing in conservation and almost some social prescribing, working with people that have that sense of connection and belonging as well, that it might be new to the school or new to community. So it just shows how kind of broad it is, and the different, ways we can work with the natural world to make it into a therapeutic intervention through creativity or through planting, creating spaces around the school, like you mentioned, the biophilia. And so I'm wondering, how do you bring it into your personal practice for self-care?
Yeah, well, I mean, and that is something I'd like to share more with others, really, and I just haven't quite got there. But so for me, the whole what I learned over that year with you, Kit, is I think maybe like the importance of intention when it comes to it. So, as we kind of mentioned, I actually grew up in quite a very lucky, very green, well, it wasn't always green actually, but very natural environments. I was often surrounded by nature, and it's the intentionality now. So when I cycle to work, I cycle at a slightly slower pace. I'm looking at the we've just had spring here, just coming towards the end of spring, but looking at the way the different colors of the leaves as they're coming up from the different trees, noticing that. And I found I always found like traditional mindfulness quite hard to access.
Yeah.
But I've found accessing a kind of state of mindfulness through openly kind of watching and connecting with nature to be really, really powerful for me, and really and I found it really easy to kind of pin into it. So it'll take me seconds to go somewhere and just take a breath and notice a bird, or notice the breeze in the trees, or the smell of a flower or something, in a way that I never did before, although I must have always been open to that. I just didn't, with a lack of intention, or I didn't quite know what I was doing. But now, and in terms of what's the impact for me personally, actually, so towards the end of the course, my wife had, this was without prompting, my wife just sort of, I think we were sat outside, maybe having a wine on a Friday evening or something, and she sort of noticed that, she said that she'd noticed how much more proactive I was in life, how I was how sort of more how I was calmer. Not that I was kind of some lazy guy who was totally disrespectful at all points, but she noticed this difference in me, and we were talking about it, and I think it is, well, we both feel it is through this kind of greater connection with nature and this more intentional connection with nature. And then so I've got 2 daughters, one turning 7 tomorrow and the other's 9. So the current the current 6-year-old, she goes to elite kickboxing on a Tuesday afternoon. It's an hour and a half, and I'd take the older one and the dog with me, and we drop her off, and then we go to a different spot for a nature walk, basically. And we go to all these different spots, and it's really great to sort of experiment with what she likes and what she loves woodlands. But we've got this wood. We've got a charity over here, Trees for Life. They look after a couple of woodlands, and they look after the Arboretum, and they've got this tiny little woodland. It's not a particularly kind of inspiring woodland. It's been planted over the last, must be, I guess, 15 years or so. It hasn't got very many big trees, but what they've got is I think they've got something like 150 trees there, but they've all got their names on them. They've all got little tags with their names. And my daughter actually just loved it, and she just loved going around, going, right, okay. And she was testing me. I didn't pass, but she was going, right, okay, Dad, what tree is this? And so we're looking at it, we're going, oh, what do the leaves look like? What's the bark like? And I sort of guessed what it was. Some of them I knew, some of them I took a guess. Some of them the guesses were right, some of them they were way off. But that was, just an amazing thing to do with her. And I guess it's sharing that connection, but it's also a way that if we just walked around that space, we might not have connected in the same way. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Yeah.
So it's a facilitator for connection as well, because it sounds like you were curious and you were in wonder and awe, and you were sharing both your experiences with each other. And I think that formed a further connection, not just both of your connection with nature, but that invited for both of you to connect as well, and just noticing those different things.
Yeah, and definitely on a personal note, I always try to get the girls out and about, but sometimes they're they're not up for going. Like, no, I'm not going. I hate the beach, or whatever it is. And then I go, well, that's happening anyway. You're getting in the car. We're off. And then as soon as the door of the car's open and they're out, then you can't get them back.
That's right.
There's a barrier you've got to kind of, and I guess it's probably a barrier for all of us, really.
Really good point that you made there. And I guess, you work with families. This is something you specialize in. You've got your own family, and you made a really important point. And I'm wanting to know, what advice would you give someone who wanted to take their family out and increase their engagement with their family and nature, and noticing, those barriers? Do you have any advice?
Yeah, well, I think it's important not to think you have to be an expert about it. I think, it can be as simple as just sort of going for a walk somewhere. But actually there are lots of little things that you can do to kind of maybe bring it more alive. So I've got these, I use it with families. I've used it with my own family, just like a little, it's just an A4 piece of paper with a table. So it's with two columns of a table, and each section of the table's got a different color, and you've got some wooden pegs on it. And it's, well, let's go around and see if we can match something from nature with each of these colors, and you peg it on, and you see what you can find. And it hits differently. I mean, that's the thing, is that everyone's different, so it hits differently. So I've done it with groups, and some of the kids have shot round, and they've got something in 5 minutes for everything. But I did it with a family the other week. A mum, she had a little daughter, a baby daughter on her back, and we had a little 7-year-old son out, and it was an hour of just really kind of carefully going through the woods and around the sort of top of the cliffs, looking for these things. So that is kind of a real way to slow down and connect with nature. Similarly, and you can do little scavenger hunts, like sort of, what have I done? I've done them on the beach and gone, who can find a stone shaped like a heart, find a blue bit of sea glass, find a bit of plastic, find the roundest rock you can, find the biggest shell, find the most interesting shell, find 3 different shells, whatever it is. You can kind of, it's open.
You can create anything. Yeah.
And those are the sorts of things that, you know, with younger kids, it sort of hits in. And I guess that is an unintentional connection with nature, isn't it, really? But I just think it's great. And the more time you spend, the more comfortable you are. And I think it is about a comfort thing. And I think people feel they can feel that they haven't got the skills for it. And before we started recording, we were talking about the use of technology and apps, and how they can help spur people on to connect. And there's this Merlin app that will recognize bird song. So you can literally go and find a little sit spot and have your phone open and press record, and it'll start feeding in these different birds that you're hearing, and you can tap on them and it'll play back the call and the sound. So you can really kind of connect with nature in a very not through technology, alongside technology, but that opens you up to then, you know, instead of just looking at what birds are coming in, going, oh, I wonder if I can see that bird.
Yeah.
And looking, there are lots of little tricks to it, but I think the importance is that it's just about getting out there and that exposure, isn't it? We have a few people. I run some groups for families and some sort of walking groups for parents. And I think one of the things from that was people being introduced to environments that they hadn't been to before, you know, like an area of woodland or a beach or cliff, whatever it might be. But that, you know, a lot of these guys have got neurodiverse kids, and they'd worry about going somewhere if they weren't sort of aware of it, or they hadn't been there before, but they don't feel they can go there and explore it because they've always got their kids there, but they don't want to go there with their kids in case it's overwhelming for the kids or it's unsafe for the kid. Or so there's a bit about knowing places you can go and feel comfortable, and then kind of, I guess, extending that. And I guess that's something that I've spoken about with our clinical psychologist lead, about how we can kind of create a community almost that shares these ideas and shares, you know, whether it's putting it on a map that people can access as to, you know, dropping a pin and saying lovely woodland, single path, not many dogs, or whatever it might be. You can, what bus route you can use to get there, whatever it is, to just kind of help open up all these different areas.
That is a great idea. That's a really good idea. And often we have them for bushwalkers, right? What grade it is, if it's easy, medium or hard, if it's steep. If there's, you know, can we have something similar that we give to families or to people as, you know, and I guess this is part of the risk assessment as well. When we're looking at working with nature as co-therapist and taking people outdoors, what is our capacity? What is the person's capacity to be able to feel safe? What might be the risk? And I think, having a little booklet made up of your local areas as suggestions, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think it could be really good. Yeah, I mean, it's hard because obviously all these places, I mean, that is something else I've become more aware of, I guess, over the last kind of 18 months or so, is the change. You know, I can go, you know, I'll do a little site assessment of somewhere where I take people before I take them there. But unless I kind of do a little quick sort of flyby before a session, you know, it could be that area's completely changed. We had a huge storm not long ago that brought down trees. That's changed the environment within some of the woodlands. But even, you know, even on the beach, there's this beach quite near quite a built-up area, and I've taken some families from at the end of school down onto the beach, and we've done kind of some low tide exploring, but also some fire lighting, and made hot chocolate and had marshmallows. Had like a family day on the beach, but and there's this great little area that sort of with kind of concrete along the sea wall. But then when I went back with a kid, and I hadn't done a flyby, I went back with another kid. and actually the storms throwing the stones up all over the sea. No, you no longer had this little concrete area to do it on. I mean, you could still do it, but it's just interesting that you need to kind of be aware as I guess a practitioner, a facilitator, a leader, as to what the environment, how the environment can change. But also the beauty of that is that it does change, and so you can go to the same spot weekly for a year, and it's never going to be exactly the same. There's always going to be some different colors in the leaf and the foliage, in the in the state of the weather, in the flowers that are out, whatever it is, in the birds that are there, because lots of them are seasonal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that. And this is something we can bring into our metaphoric kind of language when we're doing counseling outdoors, is talking about how nature is so adaptable and it changes, and the impermanence of life, impermanence of problems, impermanence of situations. And and as humans, we're not just one thing, we're many things, and we change and adapt. It's a beautiful teaching.
Yeah, I had actually was out with a mum, and she, as part of a parent group, we came across this tree that had been blown over. Gosh, it must have, from the look of it, the way it's grown up, must be 10, 15 years since. But where the root bowl had kind of pulled up, you had these tendrils of roots that had come, almost like kind of bony skeleton fingers that had come from the top and rejoined, found their way back into the soil to nurture this fallen tree that is then now, from the fallen trunk, growing up again. And she really saw a kind of metaphor for herself and her resilience within that image. And yeah, she took a picture to take away to print out and put on her fridge, which I guess is another use of technology, as the kind of interactions through photography to kind of make more permanent that experience, maybe.
Yeah, and it makes it personal. And yeah, we can take images of nature, we can see, and that's what we did with the nature reflection cards as well, observing nature and getting teachings from nature and applying that. And it sounds exactly that's what the lady did. She saw a metaphor, she took a photo, she captured it, and then she printed it as a reminder and a takeaway that, that was quite reflective of what was going on for her. And it was an experience that will always be with her. And that's a wonderful example.
Yeah, I had another one actually who was talking about, we were out, well, I gave her the choice. There was a woodland walk or a kind of coastal walk. She wanted to do the coast. She felt more in tune with water, she said. And she ended up having a really long conversation about where she saw the kind of link between tides and waves and her own journey with her own mental health, and how she kind of, how she had to keep notice of it, because she feels it coming in and coming out, but of a kind of an acceptance that is what she manages on a day-to-day basis, but a kind of acceptance that it's okay. These things do come, they come up, they go back down. Sometimes the waves crash, sometimes they ripple, which was, it was really good little session, actually. I enjoyed that one.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I guess to end our session today, to end our talk, is there a key takeaway that you would like to give to listeners around, connecting with nature, or just anything you would like to leave us with?
Yeah, a little nugget. Well, I think get out there. Don't be afraid. Get out there, try it, and look for it. I guess look for it in place. Look for it everywhere, because actually it is everywhere. Even in cities, there are trees and there are weeds popping up through pavement cracks, and there are ants and beetles and things flying about. So I think, try and be as open yourself up as much as possible to notice it, and I guess notice with intention. I think that's. So I find, like, because I think nature doesn't matter if if you're out there. I could go on like I don't actually run, but I could go on a 5K run and want to beat my personal best and have my headphones in and run through a wonderful woodland. But in fact, it's going to be better for me than if I'm on a treadmill. Definitely, 100% going to be better. But if I do the same thing and I'm not so worried about my personal best time and I haven't got my headphones in, then I'm going to be that much more open. And then if I take that same route, but I'm just walking and I'm not pushing myself with any kind of pace, I've got to be there at 1:15. I'm just going to take my time and I walk. People talk about walking in breath rather than being out of breath. So so if we're in breath, then we're open. Our senses are open. If we're out of breath, our body is needing the oxygen. We're getting a little bit to that fight or flight thing because the body's under stress. But if we're walking in breath, relaxed, then our body's not under stress, and the vision of the senses all the senses kind of just opens out, and you're that much more able to kind of appreciate your surroundings, I guess.
I love that. And that is the key difference of being in nature and being with nature.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I've really appreciated you sharing your knowledge and listening
Thank you.
to your experiences of working with nature and bringing it into your personal life and your family life. It's been really, really valuable. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kit. I've really enjoyed it as well. Nice to be able to kind of reflect on it. To give me even more ideas to go away and try and make happen as well. So thank you.
Awesome. No worries. Thank you so much. And we'll
All
finish
right.
here.
Okay.